Alright guys, happy Wednesday, and this week something was weighing heavily on my mind. I'm explaining the process, the aftermath, and my experience with defamation, ? Generally speaking, from my experience, the law is unique because opposing counsel is allowed to frame the facts in their favor. They can interpret the contract in their way, and they can make arguments that I strongly disagree with. This is why you always do your own research. Statements made in court filings, briefs, even in legal arguments are generally protected by the litigation privilege, believe it or not. Also, I think it's interesting when people bring up freedom of speech, as I do as well. It's not what you think it is. Actually, go ahead and read who that applies to and when. Not only that, but it doesn't protect you from confrontation like most people think. Everyone loves to throw around the word defamation, but very few people can actually prove it. And even fewer people can understand it, even psychologically, how it works. So, if you've been following the series, you know exactly where we left off. We went from a full grievance to a full-blown defamation lawsuit. Welcome back to the nursing investigation. So instead of jumping right into the court transcripts today, I think we need to pause. Let's clear something up. Defamation is not, I don't like what you said. That hurt my feelings. Or you're talking bad about me online. That's not how the law works. It doesn't go off vibes. So defamation has standards. In my experience, to prove defamation, what I think you generally need is core elements of defamation. This isn't just one or two. Typically, you have to meet all the standards to prove defamation. If someone says, in my opinion, or this felt unfair, or in my experience, that's not defamation. If someone shares their experience, investigates, educates, or wants to become a journalist, that's not automatically defamation. If someone shows documentation, that becomes very important. Truth is also a defense, meaning if it's true, it's not defamation. I mean, those are your actions. You did that. That's your responsibility. So the question becomes, why is the word being used so aggressively? Why try to control the narrative instead of correcting it? Because defamation is a legal term. It's not a personality trait. You don't just assign it to people because you're uncomfortable. How is defamation even proven? Let's be very clear. You need to show that the statement was false. It was presented as fact, not opinion. It was shared publicly, and it caused real, measurable harm. So when I come online and I say, not, I felt embarrassed, not, people think differently of me, we're talking about actual damage, like lost money, lost opportunities, and real consequences that became of because somebody spread a malicious lie intentionally. They knew it was false. They had no proof to back it up, and they did it anyway. Like somebody is saying, your neighbor's cheating on his wife. They have no proof. They just got mad one day and ruined his marriage. Like that would be real damage. That's defamation. If the guy wasn't doing anything anyway, and you spoke it out to all your neighbors, it got back to the wife, she ended her marriage, took him for everything, whatever the case may be. That's real damage. Somebody got upset and emotionally made a decision, emotionally charged decision, that had no factual basis, no proof to back it up, literally just created it out of thin air and did it with malicious intent. That is more along the lines of defamation. And remember, you can't have one of the pillars of defamation. You need to prove them all. So had she have gone out there and said, I really think he's cheating on you, girl, that's not defamation. And then speaking of that, though, the burden is not on the person speaking. Like, it's on the person claiming they were defamed. They have to prove which ways they were defamed. So let's flip it. What happens when somebody accuses you of defamation? Did you tell the truth? If it's true, it's not defamation. Was it an opinion? Were you stating your feelings? Did you say, in my opinion? Were you showing people your experience, walking them through your lived experience, your reality? That's not defamation either. Documentation. Do you have any proof, any substantial evidence that backs up your claims to where somebody could see your point of view? Context. Were you explaining your experience? How were you putting what you were communicating in context for people to interpret in their own way? How were you framing it? Intent. Were you informing or lying? For example, were you educating somebody on something? What was your intent behind it? Was it malicious? There was really no core reason to do this. You just got emotionally charged and tried to do XYZ. What is your intentions behind doing this? And I also think this is interesting. People who I think are confident in their position don't panic over transparency. They correct it. In my opinion, this is how I see it. If I felt like somebody was defaming me or vice versa, I was in a position where somebody felt like I was defaming them, I would so be willing to have a conversation and correct any mistakes if there were any. If I did something wrong, show me proof. Not protected legal claims, but actual proof, actual evidence, not the agenda, but the neutrality of it all. A lot of people, when it comes to law, they don't think about the psychology behind it. This is the part that people don't talk about. And I think it's important for everyone, not just me, to be aware of when you're served with legal papers, what that actually means. But for anyone watching this, because we live in a time where people are afraid to speak up, contrary to how much we see online, a lot of people are scared to say the truth. They're scared to even say their own lived experience because defamation is tossed around so easily these days. Anybody can send a cease and desist, even if it just means to bankrupt you into silence. Personally, I think that reputation of doing that to people is worse than actually having a conversation, setting the record straight. Unless you're like 100% in the right, like we talked about earlier, somebody is just emotionally charged, they don't like you, their intent is malicious, there's no background, you've had no communication with this person. Don't feel like it's that in my case. I think if you listen to my story through and through, you may be able to see where I'm coming from, what my experience feels like. I think it's worse to drag people through the mud, especially maybe somebody who you've already taken a lot from. Because at some point, when you're dragging somebody through the mud, I don't think you control the narrative anymore. You just created a new one. In my opinion, a worse one. Especially in this day and age, when most people are unemployed, on welfare, make up the lower middle class, give or take. I mean, almost anybody can feel an emotional pull to somebody trying to fight for a better life, and somebody who has more, let's say generally speaking, take from them. I feel like that disproportion really would make somebody look less advanced than they're trying to be. Suing somebody for defamation because you're 100% in the right, this person has no factual basis, they're emotionally charged, they've presented nothing of fact, they're just doing it I don't know. I have no idea why somebody would do that. So I can't even tell you what that would feel like. On the other hand, if somebody actually has, claims that they feel are accurate when they're sharing their experience, and a third party who is out of the situation can look inside and be like, okay, I can see where things are a little shaky, why this person would feel like this, what it looks like from their perspective. Now, I operate on a moral compass more than most, so I have a hard time looking through a procedural lens and people looking at things like, these are the rules, this is the law, this is the policy. I look at things from a moral compass as well as that because it's important too, but the moral lens is always first for me. And that can be my downfall sometimes because the way I see it is, why put energy into hurting somebody over and over again? Like, you don't know how to turn that energy into something better, more productive. And yes, sometimes I feel like I struggle with this, and I really struggle with it because I'm like, the universe is neutral, or God, whatever you believe in. Like, the universe has no feelings. It's indifferent. We give it feelings by being human, right? So I struggle with, why do people do bad things and get away with it? Kind of thing. Like, why do people put energy into hurting others over and over again? They just get away with it. Whether it's in human form or whether it's a spiritual form, why does it feel like bad people never suffer any kind of consequences? So to me, when it looks like there's no consequences, I have to remind myself that the consequence is staying stuck in that cycle. The universe doesn't punish them, but human life will. We all suffer, but most of us who do operate on a moral compass will learn with each cycle. One day we'll get out of it because each time we go through that cycle, we'll learn a little more, and we'll eventually get out of it and create a brand new cycle. Those that are broken continue cycles. Instead of elevating, they will stay in the same orbit and relive the same day over and over again, essentially. To me, I look at everything on a life-impacting and meaningful level. To others, they may see things as procedural or defensible, and the moral compass may never cross their mind. God may never cross their mind. The mismatch is what makes it feel so disproportionate from me, and I think through this process, I really learned how to disassociate from feelings, from God, from the universe, spiritually, and then look at things from a human perspective, which I feel is so low vibrational to not combine the two. That's another conversation, but I'm really trying. And I'm like, what if people just don't have that mental capacity or that awareness or that spiritual elevation to see things any different? Systems do what they're built to do. People will act from what they know, fear, or believe. That's psychology. And that's the sad part, I think. It keeps people from telling the truth, making change, and that's what I want to change because I've been left with no other feasible option. I have nothing anyway. And I kind of feel like I was put in that position because maybe if I did have something to lose, I'd be too scared to say anything. I think throwing the word defamation around or lawsuits in general, it creates fear. Oh my gosh, what if I get sued? It creates silence. What if I should stop talking? What if I'm the crazy one? That self-doubt. What if I did something wrong? What if it is actually me? The isolation. Well, nobody else is saying this or doing this. It's me against an army. Maybe it is just me. And I think that's the ultimate goal. Not always to win, but to make you question yourself, to make you stop. Whether it's the behavior, the ruling, or sometimes bankruptcy. To the pro se litigants, hello, whatever it takes to make you feel small and give up, I feel like is a psychology part of lawsuit. Because the next episode, we're not talking about theory anymore. We're going to go into the actual court documents, like we're in the courtroom again, and what was said. Maybe it's all about time we start diving deeper. Instead of my experience, let's look at the record. What actually happens in a defamation lawsuit? What does that look like for somebody? What happens at the end? And that's where things get interesting, because the court is to stand as like the middleman, mediator, if you will. They're to see both sides neutrally and try to take care of or resolve whatever it may be, which I think is already far-fetched in itself. I respect the court process, but whatever happened to like mediation, just having a conversation with somebody, sitting across the table, just figuring it out and moving on. Like, I just think about all the money, the time, the energy, exorbitant efforts for what? When it could just be done. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's the moral compass in me. I just don't get it. Like, if I was rich or if I was a huge business owner, a commercial business owner, you would not get my time of day. Like, what do you want? Let's move on. Like, how can we fix this? There's got to be a way. I'm not doing all of this. Like, what do you want? Let's go, speed it up. I have shit to do. You know what I'm saying? So in episode 12, you got to see their version of events versus mine. I showed you some snippets of the grievance letter and then their defamation inquiry to me, showing you their perspective versus mine. I thought it was important to this week pause for a second and talk about what defamation actually is. So now when we actually go through the court documents, you can better understand what's happening. I feel like you always have to have a foundation of how it started before I tell you how it ended, so it all makes sense. The counsel is allowed to frame their narrative in a way that suits them. That's what they're there for. It's protected. They can't knowingly make false statements of fact. That can get them in trouble, but they can frame things strategically, leave out details, interpret facts in their favor, and present one-sided narratives. It's not supposed to be neutral because it's supposed to win. Systems will be systems. That's just how it is. Now, I can speak for myself. I haven't lied. I don't need to lie. I remember it because it was traumatic, and it's my truth. It's my lived experience, and I live with it every day. Even if I didn't do something about it every single day, I still remember it every single day. If I felt the need to lie, I wouldn't have gone this far. Trust me. If somebody has no grounds at all, and the intent was harm, the intent was lies, then I understand the feeling somebody would want to protect what they've built. I get that. I don't think that's right. People shouldn't be allowed to maliciously lie, to take somebody down with no good intentions. It's not going to do the world a service. Like, nothing good comes out of it. I get that. But when it's true, if it's caused damage, but when it's true, and when I feel like it's caused damage, not only to myself, but others, I think it's doing more harm and risking trust with the community just to say on paper, I win. At what expense do you win? What are you actually winning? Because either way, no matter what happens without this process, whatever happens throughout this process, because either way, whatever happens throughout this process, I've already lost so much I can't get back. I can't walk across that stage for graduation. I can't be the first person who graduated in my family. Everybody who has died, who helped me get to that point, won't be able to see any of that. All of these years I could have been working as a nurse. I can't get back. So no matter what happens, whether I become a nurse or not, and whatever that looks like, whatever I have to do that, it's still not essentially a win for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's progress to an end to whatever this is. It just goes away. Let's get into some questions and comments for the week. Ash Cash says, keep track of missed job opportunities and sue for damages. I like the way you think. And that kind of makes me feel a little better after what I just said to you guys. Nonetheless, user 79 and a bunch of other numbers. What's their reasoning behind not wanting to send your name to the Board of Nursing? So from what I understand, it's because of an exit exam. And a lot of people confuse exit exams, finals, and licensure exams. So when I completed my nursing education, my transcript was complete. It was identical to those other students who went on to take their NCLEX. The only difference is I did not have a degree earned. It said withdrawn instead of nursing, and my conferral date for that degree says withdrawn because I did not meet a benchmark of the school's policy that says on this exit exam, you must meet this benchmark to graduate. From my perspective, that is what I read. That is what it looks like to me. If you didn't meet that benchmark, you could not go on to take your NCLEX, therefore get your license. So an exit exam in my case was not a final because it wasn't tied to a course. It's not on my transcript. It's not a part of my academic record in that fashion. All it did was give me some sort of predictive score that would let the school know my predictability of passing the NCLEX the first time or not, or what my percentage was and what that looked like. So from my research, I had about a 70% chance of passing the NCLEX the first time, and apparently that wasn't good enough because I never sat for my NCLEX. So you had to be like one of the highest scorers, which would then meet their benchmark, which would mean meeting their benchmark to take your NCLEX. They wanted those highest scoring students to only take the NCLEX. If you fell below that benchmark, you were not allowed to take your NCLEX. And this is not an exit exam is not a board approved licensure exam that proves competency by any measure. Honestly, at this point, I don't even know how to answer this question. This causes so much controversy, and to me, if it causes controversy, if it is a discussion, if it's a debate, that deserves scrutiny in itself, because there isn't an answer if there is a debate on it. When students go to nursing school, they don't all take exit exams. Some nurses have never taken an exit exam. Some nurses have taken exit exams, have failed them, and passed their NCLEX the first time. Some students have failed their NCLEX and have passed their exit exams. It happens. All in all, in New Jersey, the board regulated a rule saying a school, but that goes to open the conversation of how does something that's not even on my transcript prevent me from taking my license? How does one complete nursing school and not meet a benchmark for an exit exam? How can you take somebody's full tuition paid, have them complete their nursing education, then at the end say, oh yeah, this exit exam is essentially, in my opinion, in my words, will have you forfeit your entire degree on paper if you do not meet this benchmark of predictability of passing the NCLEX the first time, have one of the best scores, have one of the higher scores. Like, it's just crazy to me. Any reasonable student who completes their nursing education, the education the board requires, would think they would be sitting for NCLEX. I don't understand. Kaylee Macron says, wait, why did my school do this to me too? And this is why it's so important for me to speak up about this, investigate what is actually going on, and educate others, because I wish this was stuff I knew back then. I would have chosen a different school. Miss Lewis says, terrible. My mom graduated from there and absolutely hated it. Dominante Lakaila says, what? And I was like, I wake up every morning hoping it was a bad dream, but it's not. Bitchney says, what was the reason with the Cardi B gif? I know, it's so confusing. I think I'm going to make another video breaking it down again, because people don't understand what an exit exam is, how it was used, how it differed from a final or a course in my situation, how it's different from the NCLEX, whether it proves competency or not. So I think I'm going to make a video breaking this down on TikTok. Sab said, I've seen this before. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you guys for sticking with me. I will see you next week, and we will continue to move forward and keep investigating what's going on in the nursing world, in the education system, and what that looks like for people like you and me. So I will see you next week, where we will actually get into the court documents. And if you've believed me up to this point, if you feel like you've resonated with my story or see things from my perspective, I really appreciate it. All right, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.